When we visited the Carter Presidential Library in May 2023, Tony Clark graciously offered to be our tour guide, and in late December 2024, Jimmy Carter, our oldest living president, passed away shortly after his 100th birthday. In the first of our reflections on this tour, Tony told us many personal stories about Jimmy Carter, including how he grew up on a farm near Plains without electricity or running water, married Rosalyn Carter, and joined the Navy serving on a nuclear submarine. In our second reflection of this tour, after Jimmy Carter's father passed away, he resigned from the Navy and the Carters moved back to Plains, Georgia, to run the family farm and business. He then ran for a Georgia state Senate seat and later was elected governor of Georgia. With encouragement from many top Democratic officials, he ran and won the presidential election of 1976. In our third reflection, we pondered on the many challenges Jimmy Carter faced as president, losing to Ronald Reagan in the 1980 election.
When he left office, he's only 55, 56, and his mom said, okay, what are you going to do now with the rest of your life? Because she had gone into the Peace Corps and worked in India when she's in her 60s. And Carter had a lot left to do. And I think millions of people around the world are very fortunate because he decided to remain active. In fact, we devote about a third of our space to the post-presidency because he has been such an active post-president.
In his autobiography, Jimmy Carter reflects on founding the Carter Center, which continued many of the peacekeeping and humanitarian efforts that he began during his presidency. He discovered that, as a former U.S. president, he could still influence world events. And he always kept the current president and the State Department aware of his peacekeeping and election monitoring efforts. Jimmy Carter and the Carter Center engages in peacekeeping efforts, including his efforts in Haiti, election monitoring to encourage free and fair elections, and public health campaigns in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. Jimmy Carter explains his intent in founding the Carter Center. I found that I could offer my services as a mediator to help prevent or resolve conflicts, and they would also monitor elections around the globe. The Carter Center would sponsor conferences on peace in the Middle East, international security and arms control, business in the environment, education, and global health. And the Carter Center only embarks on public health campaigns when the host country agrees to cooperate and favors tackling diseases that respond to education and low-tech efforts, often involving improved sanitation, using local volunteers whenever possible. The most astounding success is with the elimination of Guinea Worm, a debilitating parasite, which the Carter Center's volunteers have nearly eliminated, with just a handful of cases worldwide.
Sore, you can see the Guinea worms coming out, and it really hurts. There is a Guinea worm. Can you imagine that coming out of your body? And you can have multiple Guinea worms coming out. And you have to wrap it around a stick for the month or so it takes to come out. And what they have been able to do is teach people to filter their water and drink only filtered water or drink it out of a filtered straw. And that has enabled them to get it from 3.5 million cases worldwide to just 12 cases last year. You can see a Guinea worm there. And you just can't imagine. It's one of what the Carters call neglected tropical diseases that,
so the aftermath is very similar to polio. It completely debilitates that knee, and sometimes the leg is crippled for the rest of one's life. And of course, these kids can't go to school. The pain is too great and they need medical care. And if it's an adult, they can't go into the field to plant their crops.
It's just tragic to see all these children walking around still with Guinea worm in this day and age when it can be prevented.
In every country where Guinea worm is endemic, it is the Ministry of Health and the National Guinea Worm Eradication Program that's the driving process. The role of the Carter Center is to assist those programs technically and financially so that the job can get done.
We've got a number of Carter's Awards from the Presidential Medals of Freedom, where President Clinton gave them, saying they've done more good for more people in more parts of the world than any other couple on the face of the earth. And the Nobel Peace Prize he was awarded in 2002. The prize itself is about $1 million. That's the good stuff. But you get 3 medallions. You get a gold and 2 bronze. Carter gave us one of the bronzes so you could see the front and back. Interesting thing is, before President Obama got his, there were 3 presidents that had received the Nobel. Teddy Roosevelt for a treaty between Russia and Japan, Woodrow Wilson for his work on the League of Nations, and Jimmy Carter. The interesting thing is, Teddy Roosevelt's mom is from Roswell, Georgia, half hour up the highway from here. Woodrow Wilson is born in Virginia but raised in Augusta, Georgia. His first job as a lawyer is in Atlanta. Jimmy Carter, born and raised in Georgia, which seems to suggest if you have personal ties to the state of Georgia and then become president of the United States, you're almost guaranteed one of these.
Theodore Roosevelt got his Nobel Peace Prize. Little did historians of the day know that that was setting up World War II.
The only one we know that had those ties that didn't get it was Franklin Roosevelt. Definite ties to Georgia, a little White House down in Warm Springs, died in Georgia. Never got one, perhaps because during much of his term they didn't give it. World War II is underway. 2 years after he died, his Secretary of State, Cordell Hull, did get it for work they had started together for the creation of the UN. So if FDR had lived, he probably would have gotten one as well. They just don't give it posthumously. And then down at the end is his first Grammy Award that shows your worst grade in music and still get a Grammy. He got it in spoken word for one of his audiobooks. In fact, all 3 of his Grammys are in spoken word for his audiobooks. But he is actually not a bad singer, and he's a really good harmonica player.
So what is the one behind you?
This is one from the Gates Foundation for their work together for global health.
And what's that one?
This is from Mrs. Carter for mental health. There's one for his work, the Alaska Lands Act. I believe this one's for Guinea Worm, and then the presidential medals.
This completes our tour of the Carter Presidential Library. Although there's some overlap or guided tour, Jimmy Carter's autobiography and his daily devotions each have unique stories and insights. Jimmy Carter also shared his philosophy on the virtues of aging. In his retirement, Jimmy Carter took up painting. His paintings included one on the Old Bank Cafe, one on My First Church, another on the Old Grist Mill. I'm not sure if there was an Old Grist Mill in Plains. And some portraits of Rosalyn Carter, and I presume Hugo is one of his grandsons. His old tools. Jimmy Carter also took up woodworking in his retirement, and a painting of Ghana women. Some of the books penned by Jimmy Carter include several biographies and White House diaries, an outdoor journal, Christmas in Plains. Jimmy Carter also wrote several books on his experience with leaders in the Middle East, including a controversial Peace Not Apartheid on Palestine. And Jimmy Carter and his wife wrote several books on mental health topics and less serious books, including a book on hunting and fishing. And Jimmy Carter's also written several books on his Christian faith. And the Martin Luther King Historical District is about a 15-minute drive from the Carter Center and Presidential Library. And the major attraction is the Martin Luther King National Park Museum.